The rain had been falling for hours, but no one at Camp Mystic expected the river to roar like that. At exactly 2:14 a.m. on July 4th, a sudden surge of water crashed through the banks of the Guadalupe River, tearing down trees, cabins, and silence. Screams echoed through the dark as teenage girls scrambled in their pajamas, their flashlights barely slicing through the torrential downpour. Elinor Lester, 13 years old, stood frozen in the middle of the dining hall, watching the river swallow the nearby chapel. It was gone in seconds. Outside, sirens began to wail, distant, then close, then gone, swallowed by the chaos. A helicopter's blade beat against the storm above them. It hovered low but couldn't land. Trees, debris, a power line. It was too dangerous. The counselors were yelling names. Girls clung to each other. Some tried to run uphill, others just cried. Elinor couldn't find her best friend, Mara. Then the power went out. And the screaming stopped. And that was just the beginning. If you believe real stories of bravery deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and stay with us. Because what happens next is nothing short of a miracle, a tragedy, and a fight for survival. The water rose fast, faster than any adult could have predicted, and far faster than the girls could react. In just minutes, the river's edge had crept past the fire pit, the trail signs, and now clawed at the foundation of the main lodge. The girls were ordered to the hill above the cabins, but the terrain was uneven, steep, slick with mud, and it was pitch black. Elinor slipped once, twice, before a counselor grabbed her wrist and dragged her upward. Behind them, she heard Mara's name being called out by a sobbing friend. But Mara still hadn't answered. Elinor turned to look back and saw a cabin ripped clean off its foundation, crashing into a pine tree, then vanishing downstream. She realized then, not everyone would make it out. At Kerrville Emergency Command, officials stared at the rising numbers. At 3:07 a.m., City Manager Dalton Rice slammed a folder shut. "We've got 27 unaccounted for," he muttered. "All girls, all from Mystic." Sheriff Larry Letha spoke into the radio. "Send the chopper to Hunt. They need extraction now. Prioritize the ridge above the lodge. Use thermal imaging. We'll lose them if we wait for daylight." Outside, first responders were already wading chest-deep in floodwater, knocking on cabin walls, screaming over roaring wind. And still, no sign of the missing girls. The Guadalupe had turned into a monster, dragging away roads, people, everything. Megan Rowe, a 22-year-old camp counselor, refused to leave the last cabin without checking every bed. She screamed names, flashing her phone light across empty bunk beds. Then she heard something. Soft whimpering. Under the last bunk, curled up and soaked, was Julia, a 9-year-old camper too scared to run. Megan hoisted Julia over her shoulder and rushed into waist-high water, but now the path uphill was gone, replaced by a violent stream of mud and broken branches. The only option? The chapel's rooftop. It was barely above the water, but solid enough. She pushed Julia up and climbed after her, praying the roof would hold. Up on the ridge, Elinor counted heads, but Mara still wasn't there. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from choice. She looked down the slope toward the flooding cabins. "I'm going," she whispered. "No, Elinor, stay!" a counselor yelled. But Elinor took off, slipping and tumbling through the mud. Lightning flashed, and for a moment she saw her best friend standing on top of a picnic table, waving frantically. It wasn't a hallucination. Mara was real and trapped. A Texas State Rescue helicopter hovered above Camp Mystic, circling. From the sky, everything looked like a war zone. Buildings shattered, tents mangled. Inside, the pilot cursed. "No safe LZ. Debris everywhere. We've got thermal hits near the old chapel. 2 girls, maybe more," the co-pilot said. The pilot nodded. "Drop a basket. We'll pull them one at a time." Below, Megan and Julia looked up at the blinding light as the rescue basket descended. Megan signaled frantically, then shoved Julia inside. "Next pass, we get you," the pilot promised. But the wind shifted, the chopper tilted, and the basket shot upward into the storm. At 4:12 a.m., emergency services received another terrifying update. The small upstream dam at Turtle Creek was on the verge of collapse. "That's 5 more feet of surge if it fails," a dispatcher radioed. Kerrville's mayor, Joe Herring Jr., turned pale. "We need to clear the riverbanks. Now." State troopers knocked on doors, shouting for evacuations. People rushed onto boats, rafts, even surfboards. Camp Mystic's ridge wasn't high enough anymore, and the helicopter couldn't return for at least 30 minutes. There was only one option: move the girls. Now through the dark, through water, before the dam gave way. Counselors and campers formed a human chain, gripping hands as they crossed knee-high, then thigh-high water toward a rocky path. Elinor and Mara held hands tight. Elinor whispered prayers under her breath. Behind them, the wind screamed like a banshee. A tree cracked and fell. The current tugged at their legs like claws. Halfway across, someone screamed. One of the smaller girls had slipped. Megan let go of the line to grab her. Now they were all off balance. But no one let go. Not this time. Step by step, sob by sob, they moved forward. Together. Sheriff Letha's team spotted something just before sunrise. A flickering flashlight between 2 broken cypress trees. "We've got movement," the deputy said. They jumped from the Humvee and charged into waist-deep water, guided by the light. What they found shocked them. A soaked group of 15 girls and 3 counselors huddled on a ledge, freezing, but alive. They'd climbed a cliffside using nothing but willpower and wet sneakers. A voice crackled on the sheriff's radio. "That's half the missing list. We got 'em." But they all knew. Half meant, half still out there. At Heart of the Hills camp, Director Jane Ragsdale had stayed behind to make sure every girl made it to high ground. When the final group evacuated, she was seen carrying a box of emergency supplies up the hill. Then came the surge. She was last seen turning around, running toward the main hall. No one knew why. A counselor said, "I think she went back for the flag." She said, "We never leave it behind." Jane's body was found near the flagpole, arms still clutching the soaked stars and stripes. When dawn broke on July 5th, the devastation was clearer and crueler. Entire campgrounds had vanished, roads were sliced open. Dead livestock floated past wrecked fences. Parents gathered at a school gym, now a reunification center. Some wept with joy. Others simply collapsed when a name wasn't called. Elinor and Mara hugged their parents, but some bunks would remain empty. TV crews arrived, drones flew, but nothing captured the pain like the silence between sobs. A forensic team tracked the final known cell phone signal, belonging to 14-year-old Aspen Green. The GPS ping led to a grove 500 meters south of Camp Mystic. Divers were sent in. An hour later, they found Aspen's phone wedged under a fallen log. Nearby, muddy initials, a +M, carved on a stone. It told a story. She wasn't alone. Rescuers found a second set of footprints, then a makeshift shelter of sticks and tarps. Hope ignited again. The girls had fought to live. Just before noon, a faint whistle echoed from the trees. Searchers paused. Then it came again. A team rushed toward the sound and found Aspen, covered in cuts, shivering, but alive. She whispered, "Marley's still there, by the old fence. She couldn't move." Medics treated her and immediately launched a search near the fence line. 20 minutes later, they found Marley under a tarp, dehydrated but breathing. Both girls were airlifted, wrapped in emergency blankets. A cheer erupted at the command center. They were the last 2. Every missing girl was now found. Kerr County mourned. Flags flew half-mast. Churches overflowed with prayers and candlelight vigils, but they also celebrated miracles. A soaked banner, once nailed above the chapel, was found a mile downstream. "Be still and know that I am God." It had survived, tattered, but whole. Parents framed it. The mayor read it aloud at a press conference, and though 51 lives were lost in the flood, including heroes like Jane Ragsdale, the survival of the Camp Mystic girls became a story of resilience for the ages. Elinor stood at the edge of the river weeks later, holding Mara's hand. The water was calm now. Too calm. They had planted wildflowers by the chapel's old foundation. The air smelled of pine and hope. "We lived," Mara said softly. "We shouldn't have." "But we did," Elinor nodded. "We were carried, somehow." They didn't understand it fully, but faith didn't need to explain everything, only that it stood with them, in the storm, in the silence, and in survival. May all the lost rest in peace, and may we always honor their stories.